March 24th, 2014. Toys R Us, it's at a $9 billion valuation. But for founder Charles Lazarus, this empire was already a hostage to a $5 billion debt trap. But this $9 billion fortress was actually a house of cards built on borrowed time. By the end of this, you'll see how a single leveraged buyout turned a retail empire into a liquidation sale. 18 months later, the company is worthless. Bankruptcy filings hit in September 2017. Charles Lazarus was a World War toy cartographer, decoding Axis signals. In English, he understood systems before he understood toys. He opened a furniture store in DC in April 1948. He pivoted to toys in June 1957. The catalogue shows it clearly. Children's Supermart stopped selling cribs, started stacking blocks. It was a calculated inventory shift, not a whim. This created the category killer model. By dominating square footage, Lazarus drove out seasonal competitors. The map of US toy retailers in the 1980s shows a vacuum where others used to be. Geoffrey the Giraffe became the face of this dominance. Lazarus created the mascot and the jingle. The brand identity was simple. If you want toys, you come here, you have no other option. The expansion went global. In 1992, President George H.W. Bush stood with Lazarus at the Tokyo opening. It was cultural peak. The fortress was complete, spanning continents and demographics. Lazarus stepped down as CEO in 1994. He left behind a legacy of volume, not digital strategy. The board saw the real estate wins but missed the logistics shift happening online. The fatal decision arrived in March 2005. A consortium of KKR, Bain and Vornado announced a $6.6 billion leveraged buyout. They loaded the balance sheet with debt, starving innovation capital for a decade. A consortium of Bain Capital, KKR and Vornado Realty Trust announced a $6 billion leveraged buyout on March 17, 2005. The deal structure was designed to strip equity, replacing it with borrowed capital. Toys R Us became a privately owned entity. This removed public market scrutiny, but installed a heavier, more immediate burden: the constant pressure of debt service. The private equity investors loaded Toys R Us with $5 billion in debt. This was not an operational expense, it was a financial engineering decision that redefined the company's balance sheet. Toys R Us had to pay $400 million annually to service its debt. This is a non-negotiable cash drain. Every dollar paid to bondholders was a dollar not spent on inventory or technology. Substantial debt service obligations impaired the company's ability to invest in its business and future. In English, they starved innovation capital to feed the bank. Industry analysts often note a pattern. The pitch is always growth. But for companies under this much debt, the reality becomes survival. Walmart had surpassed Toys R Us as the largest toy retailer in the US for the first time in 1998. While TRU bled cash to service debt, competitors optimized logistics and lowered prices. Toys R Us announced plans for an IPO on May 28, 2010. This was the first attempt to raise fresh equity and reduce the crushing debt load, but the window would soon close. The attempt to go public ultimately failed. In May 2010, Toys R Us filed for an initial public offering to raise equity. The window closed without a single share sold. By March 2013, the company officially cancelled the IPO plans. The debt wall remained high, and fresh capital stayed out of reach. Many historians view the Amazon partnership as a strategic error. In 2000, Toys R Us signed an exclusive 10-year contract to supply Amazon with toys. They paid the competitor $50 million annually to sell their own inventory online. Toys R Us sued Amazon for breach of contract. The court awarded $51 million in damages, but the competitive advantage was already gone. In 2014, management announced the Tier U transformation strategy. The plan promised to integrate online and in-store experiences, but execution lagged behind the slides. The Toy Lab concept launched in Freehold, New Jersey in 2015. It was a small-scale pilot for a dying giant's future. The financial reality was stark. Toys R Us had not reported an annual profit since 2013. The balance sheet was bleeding red ink. Q1 2017 brought a net loss of $164 million. Holiday sales were half of normal, missing budget projections by $250 million. The debt wall loomed with $400 million due in 2018. With no cash to pay it, the company faced a choice: find a miracle or file for bankruptcy. The clock was ticking toward a terminal decision. Bankruptcy court filings confirmed the mechanism. Toys R Us annually diverted cash flow to service more than $5 billion in payments. In English, every dollar generated went to creditors, not innovation. The balance sheet was hollowed out by design. The filing happened without a plan to emerge, striking before the crucial holiday season. This timing wasn't accidental. It was a strategic surrender of market share to Amazon and Walmart while competitors stocked their shelves. Suppliers who shipped goods during that final holiday window were owed $450 million. That capital likely vanished. The brand that defined retail logistics left its partners holding the bag, proving financial engineering trumped operational reality. The irony is absolute. The company that defined retail innovation was crushed by financial engineering. Charles Lazarus built a brick-and-mortar empire on volume and real estate. His successors paid for it with the company's future equity. The evidence is in the paper trail. Toys R Us Inc. ceased operations as US retailers closed their doors for the last time. The legacy of the toy man ended not with a whimper, but with a liquidation auction. The bankruptcy court filing from March 15, 2018 was unambiguous. The strategy shifted from restructuring to liquidation. In English, sell everything to pay creditors. The goal was maximizing recoveries, not saving the brand. In January 2018, Toys R Us announced it would liquidate and close up to 182 of its stores in the US. This was the first major bleed. The dominoes began to fall across the map. Charles Lazarus died of respiratory failure at Mount Sinai Hospital on March 22, 2018. The timing was fatal symbolism. He passed one day before Toys R Us began liquidation sales in the United States. The mascot's fate was determined by balance sheets, not nostalgia. In May 2018, during its bankruptcy and the closure of all stores in the United States and United Kingdom, Toys R Us announced that its mascot Jeffrey would be auctioned off. The collapse was global. Toys R Us announced it would close its stores in the United Kingdom and across the US. The brand fragmented, but the American entity was dying. The core business ceased to exist. The human cost was immediate and massive. Toys R Us informed its more than 30 employees that it would sell or close all of its US stores. Payroll stopped. Careers ended. The paper trail confirms the scale of the severance. The final closure arrived in June 2018. Toys R Us closed its remaining 200 stores in June 2018 after entering bankruptcy. The physical empire vanished. The shelves emptied. The locks turned for the last time. The aftermath is a ghost story. The IP survives, but the company is gone. True Kids acquired the intellectual property in January 2000 Shell. The brand lives, the business does not. The IP transfer to True Kids in 2019. The global Toys R Us intellectual property was transferred to True Kids Inc. in January 2019. The brand lives, the business does not. The new model, stores within Macy's and Kohl's. True Kids announced that Toys R Us would open over 400 stores within Macy's starting in 2022. This is asset-light licensing, not retail. Babies R Us revival in 2023 at American Dream. Babies R Us reopened in July 2023 with a new flagship location in the American Dream Mall in East Rutherford, New Jersey. The lesson: private equity leveraged a beloved brand to death. The debt service obligations impaired the company's ability to invest in its business and future. You cannot grow your way out of a balance sheet problem. The verdict: the company's own paper trail is the evidence. Court filings show Toys R Us annually diverted cash flow to service more than $5 billion in debt. The paperwork confirms the suicide. Final image: the ghost of the category killer. Charles Lazarus died one day before liquidation sales began. The shelves are empty, but the trademark remains a licensed shell.